Check, check, 1, 2. You guys hearing me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. I got some thumbs up. Awesome.
Yeah, hearing you good.
Awesome. I'm checking in, taking attendance. Looks like everybody's showing up. That's a positive thing. See, I'm actually looking for Chance. Chance. Chance is usually one of the late stragglers. Charles. Are we seeing Charles? Not seeing Charles yet. All right, so I think we have everybody except for Chance and Charles. Chance and Charles. I'm not seeing them in here. But I'm happy you guys all made it. Congratulations. We're here. We're doing the right things. Oh, I got a chat pop up. Loud and clear. Awesome. Way to go. Cool. So the idea is that we're going to be launching. Did everybody get my email? How about that question first? Got a thumbs up from Nick.
You got your email.
Yeah, so it's an announcement on Blackboard, and then I hit a button, and it's supposed to send it as an email. So if you're saying that you're not getting the email, we might have an incorrect email with your Blackboard. You can find all the information on the Blackboard. It's as an announcement on the Blackboard. But basically, long story short, is we are getting close to launching a test. So I think last time we covered all of our slides for chapter 5, and we verbally communicated it last time, but I just wanted to send it out in a text format in case anybody didn't quite hear it correctly. So today's session is entirely review. My goal is not to introduce any new topics to you today. Today is, totally interactive, back and forth. I can lead you through. You guys can lead me. We are here today to review. Think of it as a test prep session. We want to increase our test grades. We're going to have a test. It's covering the new material of chapter 5. Yes, but it's also midterm format. So we got chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to have a test. I will open that test. I will make it available to y'all after our meeting today. And I would ask that you finish the test at some point before Sunday evening. I'm saying 6 p.m. Sunday evening, just in case there's some issue and I need to reload it for somebody. We don't want to have to wait till the last possible minute of Monday morning, because when we have class on Monday, the goal is to review the test. I am literally giving you guys some possible homework. So if when you receive that email, I ask you to give me a response just to make sure it's working. So if you're not receiving that email, seems like Christian might have one of the issues, then, we need to make sure we've got our Blackboard emails, accurately documented there as well. So I'll still keep my eyes open for Chance and Charles. So let's click around here and see if we see Chance and Charles. Chance, Charles, are any of you guys in here? Bummer, I guess not. So is there any general questions starting out from anybody? You guys been doing your homework, you've been doing your studying? Oh, Charles made it. He's trying to connect. Positive. Okay, well, I'm not hearing a lot of interaction or participation, so I guess I will lead the session. I think that airspace is a huge, huge topic. So I know we covered airspace in detail, but maybe it might be worthwhile for us to spend a little bit more time on airspace. Personal experience for me, I failed a real deal check ride over airspace, and wow, was it a bummer. So, whether you're taking the written exam or the oral or practical exam, or, trying to understand the airspace rules in general, it's a super important topic. So what I would like to do is kind of go back and work with some real world examples. So we've seen this before. We had some examples that involved our local airspace, Eagle Creek, the local airspace just northwest of us with Lebanon, Boone County. And then we also had some airspaces for, I want to say the St. Louis area. You guys remember doing some of that short answer homework with airspace?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for the participation. Love it. Helps me out so much. Cool. So I'm going to hit the button for screen share, and I'm going to bring up some of those airspaces, and I'm going to try to walk and talk you through it in a little more detail, and that might help us out as we try to wrap our brain around the airspace system. For those of you all following along, I'm really referencing regulations. Oh, looks like Chance is trying to get in. Good deal. Oh gosh, and did I ever hit record? Yes, we are recording. Good job. So the recordings are being made available as well. Chance is getting in. He can always rewatch the recordings like anybody else. We're about to review some airspace in preparation for this exam. So I'm going to hit the screen share button. And I'm thinking that you all should be seeing some airspace. Are you guys seeing a sectional chart, airspace?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for the participation. Trying to figure out a better way that I can see it when someone chats. I guess I have to hit the button. Oh, it's yes. Awesome. Good job. Cool. So I'm going back to my screen share, and here is the sectional chart that we are studying. And the first one I really want to focus on is our home airport, Eagle Creek. All right, so here's the Eagle Creek Airport. At the very 1 foot off the ground. So when a lot of pilots try to really wrap their brain around airspace and understand it, a very good analogy that we can often discuss would be like, we start on the surface, planet Earth, and we go up 1 foot. Like maybe you're in a jetpack and you're just going straight up, jetpack straight up. What airspaces do we hit at what altitudes? And then what are the 91, 155 cloud clearance visibility requirements for those airspaces? Unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of issues when I look at your homeworks on this, so I'm just kind of taking some extra time to walk you through it before midterm happens. So here's the Eagle Creek Airport, and first thing, is it controlled or uncontrolled? It's an uncontrolled airport. Why? Because it's magenta color. Remember, the blue airport is control tower airport. Magenta is uncontrolled airport. There's no air traffic control tower at Eagle Creek Airport. The next thing I really want to point your attention to is this fuzzy shaded magenta rings. So I'm really trying to outline them with my mouse. I'm trying to show you these fuzzy shaded magenta rings that are surrounding the Indianapolis area. These fuzzy shaded magenta rings are explaining to you the division line between the Gulf airspace below, G, near the ground, and the Echo airspace above, everywhere else. So, for example, here's Boone County Airport. There is no fuzzy shaded magenta rings surrounding Boone County. What does that mean to us as pilots? It means Boone County Airport probably does not have instrument approaches. So there is no reason for air traffic control to provide controlled airspace, Echo airspace, to the lower altitudes. Whereas Eagle Creek Airport, yes, Eagle Creek does have instrument approaches. So there is much benefit for air traffic control to extend the controlled Echo airspace to a lower altitude. by having that controlled airspace at lower altitudes, it provides more services for the air traffic controllers to give pilots more separation as they try to get out of the clouds and find an airport doing an instrument approach. So I said all that to say this: Eagle Creek Airport is surrounded by fuzzy magenta circles. Fuzzy magenta circles, airspace style, means that the Gulf airspace below and the Echo airspace above, the division separation line happens at 700 feet above the ground. 700 feet above the ground. AGL, 700 feet above the ground. So that is the huge difference between an Eagle Creek Airport with a fuzzy shaded magenta around it versus Boone County, which has no fuzzy shaded magenta. Maybe you are confused by all the extra clutter surrounding Indianapolis. So I could have the exact same conversation over here with Crawfordsville Airport. At the Crawfordsville Airport, there is a fuzzy shaded magenta ring surrounding the airspace, surrounding that airport. So that means that the division line between the Gulf airspace below and the Echo airspace above happens at 700 AGL. Below 700 AGL at Crawfordsville, we have Gulf airspace. Above 700 AGL, we have Echo airspace. So that's what's going on here with the fuzzy shaded magenta. So here we're going to start from the surface and we're going to move up 1 foot off the ground and up as we go. And we're going to describe the different airspaces and the different cloud clearance visibility requirements for Eagle Creek Airport. I saw a lot of people confusing this on some of your homeworks. So when I get 1 foot off the ground at Eagle Creek Airport, that puts us in the Gulf uncontrolled airspace. 1 foot off the ground, Eagle Creek Airport, we are in the G uncontrolled airspace. Think about G, near the ground. Think about G, go kill yourself minimums. So when you're in Gulf G uncontrolled airspace, it is very, very, very low cloud clearance and visibility requirements. That is where scud running happens. What is scud running? Scud running is when the pilot is not instrument rated. What is scud running? It's where the pilot flies very close to the ground, trying to maintain VFR to be able to see out the window. So 1 foot off the ground, you're in Gulf airspace above Eagle Creek Airport. That is 1 mile clear clouds. So the cloud clearance visibility requirements would be 1 mile clear clouds. That's above Eagle Creek Airport. As we continue moving straight up, say we're in our jetpack and we continue going straight up, the next airspace that we're going to encounter above the Eagle Creek Airport would then happen at 700 AGL, 700 feet above the ground. Once we get to 700 feet above the ground, we now enter a new airspace. The new airspace is called Echo, Echo airspace. Echo airspace, our VFR cloud clearance visibility requirements are now 3152. 3 statute miles visibility, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet horizontal. So again, I'm having a lot of people screw these up, so I'm just trying to make it really clear. 1 foot off the ground at Eagle Creek, I'm in Gulf airspace. 1 mile, clear clouds. Once I get to 700 feet above the ground at Eagle Creek Airport, because of the fuzzy shaded magenta, we now enter Echo airspace. 3 miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 feet horizontal. I really need you to pay attention that I'm using the words AGL, above the ground level. Okay, so we've made it to 700 feet AGL. We're now entering Echo airspace. As we keep going straight up in our jetpack, what's the next airspace we're going to encounter? Well, now we need to really study this solid magenta ring. This solid magenta ring that surrounds Indianapolis International Airspace is depicting Charlie, Charlie airspace. In Eagle Creek, we are on the outer shelf. So here in the magenta numbers, you see 21, and you see 4.8. So these magenta numbers, those are MSL, mean sea level, above the mean sea level, above sea level. So we started 1 foot off the ground, Gulf airspace. We had 700 AGL, echo airspace. Now the next airspace we encounter is 2,100 MSL. So at 2,100 MSL, we are now encountering, bum, 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 Charlie airspace. Ooh, Charlie. So now we are actually in a true control zone. We are in a airspace that has additional entry requirements. We are in an airspace that the air traffic controller owns. So in that Charlie airspace, the 91-155, the regulations say our VFR, cloud clearance visibility requirements, 3 statute miles, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet horizontal. Okay, we are now in Charlie airspace. So now we need to have entry requirements such as established two-way radio communication, such as transponder, Charlie airspace. That begins at 2,100 MSL. I have a lot of you guys getting confused about AGL versus MSL. So 2,100 MSL. Think about it this way. If we're dumb pilots and we don't want to have to do extra math while we're flying the airplane, we can just read our indicated altitude, and that's roughly the MSL altitude. So that's why they publish this number as 2,100. It's a published number, so we can read it right off our altimeter. And we all know, operating at Eagle Creek, that when we climb out, that we don't want to climb above 2,100 because then we put ourselves in the Charlie airspace. So we started Eagle Creek. We were 1 foot off the ground. We were Gulf. We made it to 700 feet, AGL. We're then in Echo. We made it to 2,100 MSL. We were in Charlie. As we continue going straight up in our jetpack, we then reach 4,800 MSL, above mean sea level. Once we climb above 4,800 MSL, we are now back Echo airspace. Echo airspace. Echo airspace is controlled airspace. By definition, it is a controlled airspace, but if it's a beautiful VFR day, your participation is voluntary. You don't have to talk to ATC to be in Echo airspace if you're abiding by the 3 miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal, which is different than the Charlie airspace below, where yes, you do have to participate. You do have to establish two-way communication with ATC. You do need to squawk something on your transponder when they ask you to. So we started on the surface, we made it up. Once we got above 4,800 MSL, that put us back into the Echo airspace. Above 4,800, that puts us into the Echo airspace. 3 miles visibility, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet horizontal. Those rules will stay the same until we reach 10,000 feet MSL. 10,000, 10,000, 10,000 feet MSL, above sea level, mean sea level. At that point, we now reach a new sector of Echo airspace. Why do the rules change? The rules change because above 10,000 feet MSL, there's not a speed limit like there was before. So when you study part 91 of the regs, it explains to you that below 10,000 MSL, the speed limit is 250 knots indicated airspeed. Once we get above 10,000 MSL, the only speed limit is to not break the sound barrier. So planes will travel faster above 10,000 MSL, and above 10,000 MSL, that's when we would then get a larger cloud clearance visibility requirements, such as 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 1 statute mile horizontal away from the clouds. That Echo airspace would continue up until Alpha airspace. Alpha airspace would begin at flight level 180. That's pressure altitude, similar to MSL, mean sea level, 1,018 8,000, 18,000. They call that flight level 180. In alpha airspace, there are no VFR cloud clearance visibility requirements. Why? Because every pilot in every airplane is on an IFR clearance. How high does that alpha airspace go? Well, that goes to 60,000, 60,000. Call that flight level 600. And at 60,000 above that, we go back to the echo airspace. So I don't know, give me some feedback. Was that helpful? Was that not helpful? Would you guys like me to run through some more examples? What kind of thoughts or feedback do we have from that? I got a thumb up from Alec. Thumb up from Nick. So yep, thank you, Jake. So people are communicating, that's a positive. I have, what was it, two or three other examples I can walk you through. I definitely want to walk you through the St. Louis example. I think that we had a lot of issues with that example on the homework assignments. So I guess I'll go for that one next, unless somebody has more questions about any of that. All right, so I go back to my screen share. You guys should all be seeing the Sky Vector website. And very similar example that we had in the homework was Boone County right here. I'm not going to spend as much time on it. The biggest thing I need you to realize is that the fuzzy shaded magenta does not surround Boone County Airport. So at Boone County Airport, once you're 1 foot off the ground, you're in Gulf uncontrolled airspace, 1 mile clear clouds. Once you reach 1,200 AGL, that's when you enter the echo airspace for 3 statute miles, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. So really try to pay attention to your AGL and MSL, because that's where I had to knock off most of people's points on some of those assignments. So Boone County, the division line between Gulf and echo is 1,200 AGL. Okay, so we're going to zoom out. And we're going to travel west, going west. So here comes St. Louis. And I had a lot of y'all missing some questions on the St. Louis airspace example, so I thought it might be worthwhile to run through this example. All right, so we were studying this airport right here. It's called Creve Coeur Airport. Creve Coeur, 1 Hotel 0 is the identifier. Its field elevation is 462 feet. I would roughly round that up to 500, and I would use 1,500 as the traffic pattern altitude. Traffic pattern altitude 1,000 feet above the ground. Star L, that means lighting limitations exist. It's probably pilot controlled lighting. That'll be one of your questions on the test about how many clicks, 7 clicks to activate, 5 clicks to medium, 3 clicks for low intensity, about the pilot controlled lighting. 45, so the longest runway is 4,500 feet. 122.8 is their C circle, that's CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. RP 16,25. So we have a right-hand traffic pattern for runways 16, for runways 25. Standard traffic pattern is left. You'll probably see that question on the final as well, or on the midterm, I would call it. So let's take some time studying this Creve Coeur Airport and what's really going on. So what I really want to do is zoom in. And what I really want you to notice is the solid blue. The solid blue lines are showing us Bravo airspace. And what you notice is this Bravo airspace cuts around the Creve Coeur Airport. It's very difficult to see. You really got to kind of really pay attention here. There is a blue solid line that is running just west of the airport center line. So here's the runway underneath my mouse, and here's the thick blue line for the Bravo airspace. This is a very tricky airspace question. You can see they've actually carved a blue circle out of the central core of the Bravo to make more room for this uncontrolled airport that is so close to the busy Bravo airport. So if I was at Creve Coeur Airport and I got 1 foot above the ground, that would put me in the Gulf airspace. G, near the ground. Go kill yourself minimums. That's where scud running happens. 1 statute mile visibility, clear clouds if it's daytime. So what I need you to notice next is this fuzzy shaded magenta area that's surrounding. I'm trying to draw it out with my mouse. There's fuzzy shaded magenta areas surrounding this area of St. Louis. So this fuzzy shaded magenta that's surrounding is telling us that the division line between Gulf and Echo airspace occurs at 700 AGL above the ground. So when you get 1 foot above the ground in the center of that airport, 1 foot above the ground, we are in Gulf airspace, 1 mile, clear clouds if it's daytime. The next airspace that we encounter, if we go straight up, would be 700 AGL. Why? Because of the fuzzy shaded magenta surrounding this area. When I reach 700 AGL, that would put us in the Echo airspace. The Echo airspace would be 3 miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. Okay, we're doing good. What is the next airspace we encounter? Well, I'm glad you asked. So the next airspace we encounter, we really have to study this blue, solid blue. The solid blue is Bravo airspace. This runway is actually on the northeastern side of this division line. I'm trying to really dial this division line down with my mouse pointer for you guys to see. So I'm going to outline it. Here I go. I'm outlining it with my mouse pointer. This outline right now, I'll take my time and I'll run it a few times here. There's a blue outline that I'm really showing you with my mouse pointer. I'm drawing it. This blue outline is showing you the altitude of this particular sector of the Bravo airspace. This particular sector of the Bravo airspace has a floor of 1,700 MSL. 1,700 MSL. So we started at the surface, 1 foot above the ground, Gulf airspace. We made it to 700 AGL, Echo airspace. The next airspace we encounter, Bravo. The Bravo airspace is going to occur 1,700 MSL. That Bravo airspace will extend up to 8,000 MSL. Now, I have a lot of y'all missing this question. What is my cloud clearance visibility requirements in Bravo airspace? In Bravo airspace, it's 3 miles visibility, clear of clouds. So I had a lot of you guys missing it and trying to put down 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. It's actually clear of clouds. So Bravo airspace is so controlled. The air traffic controllers want to have so much authority in that Bravo airspace that they will let you get as close as you possibly can to the cloud. They're not going to put another IFR airplane popping out of that cloud to try to hit you. So in Bravo airspace, there's so much air traffic control authority that they want to be able to tell you where to turn, what altitude to climb to. They don't want you to have to come back and say, negative, that puts me too close to the cloud. So in the Bravo airspace, the rules are 3 miles visibility, clear of clouds. The Bravo airspace above Creve Coeur Airport, the lower shelf is 1,700 MSL, whereas the upper extent is 8,000 MSL, Creve Coeur Airport. Once we get above 8,000 MSL, that puts us back into Echo airspace. The Echo airspace, above 8,000 is going to be 3 miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. That will last until 10,000 MSL. Once we get above 10,000 MSL, then we're at the 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal, 5 statute miles visibility. And that'll take us up to flight level 180, 18,000 And then that's going to be IFR. You must be IFR pilot, IFR flight plan, IFR aircraft. That goes up to 60,000, 60,000, flight level 600. And above that, we go back to echo airspace of 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 below, 1,000 above, 1 statute mile horizontal. So I don't know, is that helpful? Is it review? Have you heard this before? Do you feel like it was a waste of time? What kind of feedback do we have? Got a thumbs up, some thumbs up. All right, cool, awesome, good deal. Sweet. So it's kind of an open floor. I don't mind leading the conversation, but if anybody has any general thoughts or questions about, you know, any of the chapters 1 through 5. Oh, Jake's saying, I think that was a great review. Thank you. Isaac, definitely helpful, showing the difference between AGL and MSL. Awesome, cool. Good deal. Well, if that's the case, let me show you just a few more, because you're going to have questions about this on the test. So let me just show you a few more. Airspace. Look at this guy over here. Oh, you guys aren't seeing my screen. Gosh, how do I do this? I'm gonna click a button. I'm gonna click a button. Okay, everybody should be seeing my screen now. And here is Mount Vernon Airport. Mount Vernon Airport has a solid dashed, I guess I shouldn't say solid, I'll call it dashed magenta. There is a dashed magenta ring surrounding Mount Vernon Airport. What does that mean? That means the echo airspace goes all the way to the surface. The echo airspace goes all the way to the surface. So you get 1 foot off the ground at Mount Vernon Airport. Your 91, 155 cloud clearance visibility requirements are 3 statute miles, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. You're already in echo. There is no Gulf. That echo airspace goes all the way up to 10,000. Then we enter the new sector of echo where we're 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 above, 1,000 below, 1 mile horizontal. And then up to alpha and so on. We've reviewed that a few times. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out here with this Mount Vernon. I just remembered the other one that was troubling us was Louisville. So let's go take a look at Louisville while we got our map up. And I was asking you guys about Bowman Field down here. So again, there's a lot going on with these airspaces. They're tricky. I'm giving you some challenging ones to work off of, so that way we can learn it correctly here in the beginning and not make it all the way to commercial pilot check ride still trying to figure out airspace. So here, Bowman Airport, it is a blue airport. Blue airport means there is a control tower on the field. We have a control tower at airport. I'll zoom in once more. Awesome. So now what you're really noticing is this blue dashed line. It's kind of difficult to tell. I'm really taking my time to draw it very slowly with my mouse pointer. There is a blue dashed line that is surrounding Bowman Airport. Really pay attention to this blue dashed line. I think this is why a lot of you guys are missing it and getting some questions, some points off on the homework. So here is a blue dashed line. So that blue dashed line indicates that Bowman Airport is a Delta airspace. Delta airspace, D, dialogue. To enter, you must establish two-way radio communication. They must repeat back your tail number. So at the surface, 1 foot above the ground at Bowman Airport, we are in Delta airspace. Delta airspace, 3 statute miles visibility, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet horizontal. Delta airspace, we need dialogue. We must communicate. They must repeat back our tail number, establish two-way communications. Delta airspace. You do not legally need a transponder to enter Delta. Those are the old rules. With the new rules of ADS-B, some of that might have changed, but that's the rules there. With this Delta airspace, how high does it go? Great question. I'm glad you asked. How high does this Delta airspace go? I need you all to pay attention to this blue dashed box. there is a blue dashed box. This blue dash box is telling you the ceiling of the delta airspace. So the ceiling of the delta airspace is 2,200 MSL above the mean sea level. So mean average sea level. So we start at the surface, 1 foot off the ground above Bowman Airport. We are delta airspace. How high does that go? 2,200. But wait a minute. Ooh, we got a very tricky airspace here. I did not count points off for this, but I want to show you something very interesting here. This delta airspace has a very small minus sign. You guys see that little very small minus sign? It says minus 22. Interesting. So what's going on is they're trying to tell you that the exact altitude of 2,200, there's a minus sign. So the delta airspace actually does not include 2,200. So if we were trying to be super technical, the delta airspace would begin at 1 foot off the ground, and it would go all the way up until 2,199. Because there's a minus sign, so the actual 2,200th foot is not delta. I can't fly an airplane that accurately. I'm not going to get too excited about 1 foot. It's not a big deal, but just you should know, you should realize that that minus sign means it's non-inclusive. Not a big deal. So 1 foot off the ground, delta airspace, basically up to 2,200 feet. The next airspace we encounter above Bowman is going to be the Charlie airspace. How do we know the Charlie airspace? The solid magenta. The solid magenta ring. Right here, we can see that solid magenta ring, the floor of the Charlie airspace above Bowman, 2,200 MSL. The ceiling of that Charlie airspace above Bowman, 4,500 MSL. So when you're inside that Charlie, 3 statute miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. Yes, you must establish two-way communication to enter the Charlie. Yes, you must have a transponder to enter the Charlie. Above 4,500, we're back to Echo, 3152, until we get to above 10,000 MSL. Then we're at the 5111, up way to Alpha. You got to be IFR. So this has me been reviewing some airspace. So I spent a little bit more extra time reviewing airspace. Anybody feel like they're burnt out on airspace and I should talk about something else, or is there more tricky airspace questions? Not much feedback here. All right. Okay, so we have spent ourselves time talking about airspace. What I'll do now then is I'll, start transitioning for you guys. I'm going to open up a separate tab. I'm not going to share the screen because I don't want you to see it, but I'm going to start looking at the actual midterm. I'm going to start looking at the actual test. I'm going to start kind of briefing you guys on some of maybe the hot topics. We'll go through a few questions. We'll take our break. We'll come back, and I'll continue hitting you with some more of the prep topics for the upcoming test.
Before we get into that,
Awesome.
Amaya just asked if we could do another tricky airspace question in the chat.
Great, perfect. Yeah, let's
just trying to help you out.
Hey, thank you so much. Sometimes when I got one box up, I don't see the other. Thank you. Cool, I see it. So Amaya says, can we get another tricky airspace? Good call. Let's take you guys. I'm thinking, here's a tricky one down here. So this is Clarksville. So this is a very interesting airspace we got going on here. Oh, I need to hit the screen share button. Thank you. So screen share. Okay, I think that you guys should see the, it's not ForeFlight, this is Sky Vector. So here's Sky Vector, and it's showing us the sectional chart. sometimes when I give stage checks, when I have to administer internal tests, when I give stage checks and I administer airspace tests to a lot of students, this is some of the airspace I like to ask about. So there's 3 different airports, really 4 if you count the private airport, that are all right on top of each other down here. So if you're following along, it'd be Charlie Kilo Victor. That'd be the airport I'm studying, Outlaw Airport. So Outlaw Airport is a magenta color. So there is no control tower. Outlaw Airport does not have a control tower. So what's super interesting about Outlaw Airport is that it's surrounded by a dashed magenta line. Ooh, gosh, who designed this airspace? This dashed magenta line surrounds this whole area. Very interesting area to study airspace. So what's going on is that we have an uncontrolled airport, a non-towered airport of Outlaw. Here's the information about Outlaw. Their ASOS, weather machine, up to the minute. Their field elevation, MSL. L, there's no star, so that means lighting limitations do not exist. That means somebody controls the lighting or the lighting's always on. 6,000 feet's the longest runway. They're CTAF 122.8. They have right traffic pattern for runway 5 and 35. Cool, Outlaw Airport, I see it. They have tick marks surrounding, means they have services. There's a small circle cut out at the airport. That means there's a VOR, a very high omnidirectional range, a ground-based navigation station on the field. There's a star above the airport. That means that the airport does have a beacon. Yes. Cool. What's the difficult about this airport is that there is a dashed blue surrounding the airspace. This is very not normal. So we know that a dashed blue surrounding the airspace is delta airspace. Very strange. So when you get 1 foot off the ground here at Outlaw Airport, you are already in the delta airspace. So the cloud clearance visibility requirements are actually 3 miles visibility, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal, 1 foot off the ground. But because it's a magenta airport and there's no control tower, you do not have to have clearance to land or take off. But it's inside delta airspace, so we need to establish 2-way communication with the delta tower before entering the delta airspace, even though we're on our way to go land at the uncontrolled airport. So this is a very interesting example of airspace for us. And that's Outlaw Airport. Why does this particular example exist? When you study this airport here to the northwest, Campbell Airport, it says AAF. I'm thinking that means Air Force. So this is a military base. So the military base wants to have special authority over this airspace. Same thing down here with Sabre. If you notice, the Campbell Airport is outlined. It's a very thick outline. Remember, that means that the runway is longer than like 8,069 feet. Very long runway. I mean, gosh, look at that runway, 10,900 feet long. Wow. Okay, some other tricky airspaces for this area. If you notice, here we have a blue crosshatch. I'm outlining a blue crosshatch with my mouse pointer. This blue crosshatch has the letters R, 3702 AB. R is restricted area. So this is restricted airspace where the blue crosshatch is. So you, as a pilot who doesn't know any better, you should avoid the restricted airspace. Can you legally fly in the restricted airspace? Maybe, if the restricted area is not active, if the restricted area is not hot, if you have the air traffic controlling facility's permission, then yeah, you can fly through the restricted airspace. But if you're not talking to ATC and you don't know the difference if it's active or not, then no, you can't fly in that restricted airspace. Let's study another tricky thing about this airspace. Here is a crosshatch magenta. I'm trying to draw this crosshatch magenta out with my mouse pointer right now. This crosshatch magenta This crosshatch magenta means, bum, 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 MOA. MOA, Military Operations Area. Can you fly MOA? Yes, you can enter MOA. You do not need any special permission. You can just buzz right on in MOA. But you need to exercise extreme caution. There could be some military operations in that military operations area, and there could be some practice dogfighting or some airplanes breaking the speed limit of 250 knots, and you need to exercise extreme caution if you choose to enter that MOA, military operations area. What else do you notice in this airspace? I'm outlining it right now with my mouse pointer for you. It's another crosshatched magenta, but it's huge. It's taken over all this area, crosshatched magenta. This crosshatched magenta is for alert area, A371. Alert area is, again, you can enter it. You don't need any special permission. You can enter it, but use extreme caution because there's something that you should be on extra high alert about. Typically, it's extra pilot training. So they're training a lot of pilots at this airport in this area. A lot of the military pilots are getting their training out in this practice area. A few other tricky airspace in this area. Check it out here, guys and gals. We have a dashed magenta. See the dashed magenta? I'm outlining it with my mouse pointer right now. So in this area, dashed magenta, we have echo airspace that begins at the surface. So echo airspace begins at the surface and goes up. How high does that echo airspace go? All the way to alpha. Okay, check out this tricky airspace. Fuzzy shaded magenta. Fuzzy shaded magenta. That means that the Gulf airspace G near the ground and the echo airspace above, the division line happens at 700 AGL. 700, 700 AGL. Okay, and then over here you got a private airport. This private airport has no fuzzy shaded magenta around it. What does that mean? It means that the Gulf and echo division line happens at 1200, 1200 AGL. So at this private airport, 1 foot off the ground, I'm at Gulf, 1 statute mile clear clouds. Once I get above 1200 AGL, I'm in echo, 3 statute miles, 500 below, 1000 above, 2000 horizontal. Airspace. So that was a possible tricky airspace area. Let's see, let me hit the button. So that was more airspace. We got a thumbs up, awesome. Okay. Well, I guess seems like a pretty good pause point for us, I think. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll take a breather. We'll be back in 10 minutes, and I'll pull up some of the tests, and I'll brief you guys on some of the topics that are coming up on the test, kind of like a crayon session for you. So we're going to take 10 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Does anybody know how typically high Class B airspace goes?
I think it's like 10,000 MSL. But they change it. They can change it depending on what they need.
Yeah, I know they can change it. I just don't know how typically it goes. Because I'm looking at the book here, and it's not anywhere near 10,000.
Oh, really?
It is. I can't find. And you might be absolutely right, man. It's just.
I know that I think the only airspace that actually has a designated like altitude is C and D, I believe. Hold on, I'm gonna pull. I have a paper that someone gave me. Yeah, C is at 4,000 AGL and D is at 2,500 AGL.
So at 4,000
then-
AGL.
Yeah, C is at
For C?
4,000. Yeah, C is at 4,000 AGL. Surface is 4,000.
In class D, you said 2,000?
2,500.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Wasn't some shit. Have you guys seen any good shows lately? Besides, Tiger King?
I just now watched Tiger King, actually. I think I have one more episode left.
What the
It's
hell?
pretty crazy.
Dude, how ridiculous is that show?
It's pretty crazy.
I like how my man put on an EMT jacket to go help a chick who got her arm
I saw that.
ripped off by a tiger.
I saw that. It's like, why is
the
he
first thing
wearing
he
an
did,
EMT
the
jacket?
first thing he did was just get dripped. Oh man, that was ridiculous,
He started singing at the funeral and I lost it, bro.
dude. When he said what he said about his husband, killing himself, I was like, dude, his mom is right there.
Yeah, it was bad. It's so cringe.
Yeah.
It's like it's a good show, but it's so cringy.
Oh my
His
God,
first
everybody's out for their own interest in that show. Everybody's out for their own interest. And I'm telling you, I keep rephrasing it. The only guy who makes sense and is level-headed is the coke dealer who dismembered a body.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's how you know it was really flexed. When the coke
Yeah.
dealer who makes sense.
Yeah, when the coke dealer is the only one who's level-headed, and he's like, yeah, man, that used to be me in the past. That's not me now. I got all these security measures because people are stupid. And the other guys is like, yeah, man, Tigers is cool.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's funny. Have you seen the part where he's like trying to make another speech for governor, and then a liger bites his shoe and
Yeah,
drags
they
him?
put they put perfume or whatever on his shoes.
They said that he said that they put sardine oil in his boot.
Oh man, that's not good. But
And nobody helps him. He's just like in that tiger cage, just chilling, and like drags him off. He's like, ah!
Yeah, but he wasn't like interested in the dude. He was interested in the shoe. He wanted the shoe, and that liger was not letting up. And then he pulled out his pistol and shot the ground, and he's like cussing and like shooting everywhere.
He's swinging his crotch on. Oh my god, that show's crazy.
Oh my god, that dude is ridiculous.
Free.
He's like, I'd never use a gun against a tiger. Cut to using a gun against a tiger. Oh my god. I'll tell you who I hate the most. I hate Carol Baskins the most.
Bro.
I despise her.
I mean, they're all in the wrong, if you ask me.
This fake do-gooder.
Yes.
This fake ass do-gooder. This hypocrite. She's like, he doesn't even pay his employees that much. Cut to, she doesn't pay her employees at all.
Yeah, they're all volunteers, quote unquote.
That work full-time schedules and are on the yeah.
She's like, I work Christmas. I work Christmas like 10 years in a row.
Yeah. It's like, that's a job. You know, you're not doing anything good. You're just helping this chick get more money. And then the other guy's like, come over. He's like, if you're a girl, come over to my sanctuary and get enlightened by my penis, and then become like really good at tiger stuff. Oh man. Ah. I don't want to live in this world anymore. All right. Chart supplements. If you guys are into stand-up comedy, Mike Birbiglia, no, not Mike Birbiglia, Tom Segura put out a new special.
Yeah, Bert Kreischer too. I watched him.
Yeah.
Michael Birbiglia is one
yeah.
of my favorite
love
comedians.
Yeah, I did too.
Bert Kreischer, yeah, he put out another one. I like how if you watch Tom Segura, he talks about Bert Kreischer. He's like,
Yes.
I had a talking about his weight competition against him. He's like, he's a shit person. Like,
I love how they're all friends. You know what I mean?
oh yeah. I like how they bash each other on their specials. That's amazing, dude.
For sure.
Dude, hold on, Cameron, did you say you watched the new Bert Crusher special?
Yeah.
Dude, the one about his daughter had me dying.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, all of the ones of his daughter had me dying, especially when
No, especially the new one when I'm not gonna say it out loud, but
The flashlight.
no, I'm talking about the one where with the kickball scenario.
Oh.
That one had me dying.
My
I was like,
favorite
oh
thing.
my god.
my favorite one was where he was like, name a street name that starts with N, and she's like, I put Toys BID. That's a street name, right? Dude, that was stupid.
That's great.
Yeah, it's worth watching, man. That thing is good.
10 out of 10.
Oh, it's always worth
They're-
watching. It's great.
They're ridiculously good comedians for sure. Has anybody else gotten with their flight instructor?
Not yet.
I had a couple of sessions with him.
Yeah.
I haven't done for a long time.
Oh, bloody hell. Damn, man, it's another cloudy day.
Oh yeah. It's been this for a long time ago.
What's on your nose, boy? Okay.
Is that a dog or is that what is that?
Well, what?
It sounded like somebody had like a whining dog.
Oh, I'm talking to my dog right
so
now.
that's what it was. It's like I can hear him like whining or making noises. I was like,
Yeah.
is that a dog?
Yeah, that's him.
What's the little guy's name? Or
Being
big guy? I
lazy,
don't even.
doing fuck all.
I don't know. I don't
Callie.
know.
Here, I'll show you. He's
Retweet it.
oh bloody hell, this thing's still touched. Here, I'll show you what he looks like. There you
Oh, what
go.
a
Say hi,
cutie.
Callie.
What a cutie.
He's like, get that camera out of my face. I'm trying to do bollocks over here.
He looks
Dude,
tired.
he's since he's like 9 years old. Since we've been here, he's fed up with me. Like anytime I try to touch him or have you, he's just like automatically like, hey buddy, hey, I'll get you. Oh, you're not annoyed with me this time, dude. Isaac, I think he misses you, man. I know you miss Isaac. Do you miss Isaac? Huh?
I'm the only one that
That's how
I'm the
Mom
only
let
one
you
to
up.
play with that
Go.
freaking dog when we were over there. Well, no, Andrew did a couple times.
Yeah, he's. Yeah, he does.
Kelly.
He's like, nah.
Yes.
You
Not
don't come
how
over
it
no
is.
more. He's like, I can't get the corona, but daddy can, so screw that guy. Come over. Come on, boy.
Kelly.
Where's mommy? Go lay down with mommy. Go lay down with mommy. Go. Oh, let me feed him. Let me feed the little dick.
What?
You guys look like a bunch of lazy assholes.
I'm sitting in here to stay out of your way while I'm creating like 30 playlists now because it got really separated.
That bored, huh?
No, it's just like, well, I can't put musicals with this, so that musicals got its own playlist. And then I was like, but I don't want to really put female singers in with all this rock music, so then
Honey,
that got its own.
honey, that sounds gay as shit.
Hey, Christian, everyone can hear that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I figured so.
Don't
Yeah,
want
let
to
me
offend
mute this,
nobody.
guys, so you guys don't hear me.
Is there any chapter that anybody's struggling with other than chapter 5?
You sound really happy about that in the end.
Well, I'm just thrilled to be learning online,
Yeah,
I kind of struggled.
it's cool, but I don't know.
It's all a struggle because it's all, yeah.
Like, there's not really a schedule. Like, we don't really have due dates or
Yeah.
anything.
Exactly.
So,
That's why
like,
it's a
I have
struggle.
to, like, find time to do all the stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like it feels a lot harder than what it would be if like we had classes. I don't know.
Well,
What the hell?
no, chapter 2 just, I don't know, but I know chapter 2 is my lowest grade.
No, I'm from Zimbabwe, jackass.
I think everybody's is chapter 2 there, mate. That was a pretty hard chapter.
For
Was
sure.
chapter 2 about like the power plant and stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that a cat?
I have no idea.
That sounds like a cat purring.
Your cat isn't the only one that likes to.
Be in your face.
My God, this is like age of 10,000 years.
Let me plug this up, mate.
Can you guys hear me? Are we all back maybe?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you for the feedback. So I got a message. So this came from my boss this morning. I'm kind of reading it off my cell phone here. I'll make a post and send this around. And they're saying that flight training in aircraft has been suspended tentatively till May 1st. We will be monitoring this ever-changing situation, inform students of when we will resume flight training. So right now, the day that hopefully we get the green light to fly airplanes again would be May 1st. That's currently what I'm getting from the boss, May 1st. There is, we now have authorization to start doing some digital meetings. So whoever your flight instructor might be, you guys might do it here through a Zoom, you might do it through a FaceTime. There's a way to do it through Blackboard, but it's possible that you can start working on some ground schooling one-on-one with your actual one-on-one flight instructor as well. So be sure to get in contact with your flight instructor and try to set something up, whether you guys use your old schedule time slots or whether you try to do a different time slot. That's between y'all. But that's just the latest breaking information that I got here, so I thought I'd share that with you as well. Cool. Well, I think we've all said it a few times now. The idea is that at the conclusion of today's class, I'll hit the button that launches the test. You don't have to take the test right this minute, but I'm asking that you complete the test before Sunday. I'm saying 6 p.m. just to give myself some time, so that way we're not, you know, struggling too late in the hour on Sunday night in case somebody has issues. The test will be roughly about 70 questions. There'll be a time limit on it of 2.5 hours. So when you click go to start the test, you must complete the test in that time period, 2.5 hours. If we were together in a classroom in the computer lab, it would be a closed book, closed notes test. When you take the real FAA written exam, it will be closed book, closed notes. So I encourage you to do that. That'd be the way to do it, but I'm not there physically in the room with you. What I would really try to ask from you though is that to try to avoid having computer problems. If it happens, it happens. But like if you need to give your computer a fresh restart before you take the test, make sure to close out any non-essential computer programs that might be going on. Only have one browser open with the one tab that's running the test. I think those are some just kind of simple protocols that we could try to, you know, if a test crashes and you guys need to get a hold of me and I need to reset a test, by all means, I'll do what I can for you and we can do that. But we'll try to do preventative measures to try to avoid that from occurring to begin with. Yeah, so that's kind of the rough and dirty of it. Was there any other general questions that are going around before I open up my side of Blackboard and start running you through a study session about the midterm?
Can we talk a little bit about the stuff that was in chapter 2, like regarding the power plant and engine and like excessive leaning or enriching or what have you?
Sure. So, gosh, there's a lot to talk about there. So she says chapter 2. So in my mind, I'm thinking about the book and I'm thinking about chapter 2, and that's a huge chapter for sure. Chapter 2 has information like flight instruments. You said about the engine. You said about excessive lean. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is probably what a lot of y'all are confused about. Leaning. L-E-A-N, lean, leaning, L-E-A-N-I-N-G. There are two vocabulary words, lean and rich. Lean and rich. And if you're trying to take an FAA written exam, then what you really need to figure out is the difference of lean and rich. Lean means too much air, not enough gas. Lean, L-E-A-N, means too much air, not enough gas. That's lean, okay? Lean is bad. That means it's extra hot. So an engine very simply runs on three things: fuel, fire, and air, and you need to have the perfect combination of all three. So if we have too much air, not enough gas, that means our mixture is too lean. The red knob has been pulled too far back, and the engine is going to get extra hot. So us as pilots, we're like, oh crap, our engine's overheating. What are we going to do? So we need to take actions to try to cool that engine. One of the actions might be reduce power. One of the actions might be get the nose down, decrease angle of attack. When you let the nose down and decrease angle of attack, we get extra airspeed, extra airflow over the cooling fins in the engine. The really big thing would be rich in the mixture, R-I-C-H, rich in the mixture. So if we push the red knob forward, we add extra gas. So fuel, fire, and air, we was too lean. So we had too much air, not enough gas. You enrichen it, red knob comes forward, R-I-C-H, or enrichen, E-N-R-I-C-H-E-N, enrichen, red knob comes forward. We add more gas. So now there is extra gas. That extra gas, any extra fuel molecule will be used for cooling. Any extra fuel molecule gets used for cooling. Fuel is cool. So enriched mixture would decrease temperatures if the engine was overheating. So that is like a very quick 2-3 minute spiel about the engine and richening and leaning. Those are probably some of the bigger questions that you're going to get for the sake of the ABC written exam. Some other things for the ABC written exam would be about carburetor heat. Carburetor heat. So we don't have a carbureted engine. We have a fuel injected engine, so we don't really have to worry about carburetor heat. But if you was flying a carbureted engine, then you could have a problem of ice forming in the carburetor. Bad day. Ice in a beverage, good. Ice in your engine, bad. So carburetor ice is bad because it would block airflow, and then we could no longer get the correct amount of airflow for the engine. Remember, the engine needs fuel, fire, and air. So if we have a carburetor and we have an issue as carburetor ice, one of the questions might be something along the lines of, what would be your first sign? What would be your first sign that you're experiencing carburetor ice? Well, the first sign would probably be engine roughness. If the engine starts running rough, you know, we're flying along in a single engine airplane, the pilots start looking at each other like, say, oh, is that engine running rough? One of the first things might be carburetor ice. So on the ABC written exam, it could say the word engine roughness. It could also say the word loss of RPM. Loss, L-O-S-S, loss of RPM. So your tachometer, your engine, how fast the engine spins, if your engine starts slowing down, that would be a loss of RPM. That would be a first sign of carburetor ice for a carbureted engine. The problem is that sometimes you have a fancy airplane that has a constant speed propeller. So if you have a fancy airplane with variable pitch propeller, constant speed propeller, which is what we have with the Cirrus, then the constant speed system will maintain the same RPM. So the first sign of carburetor ice on a constant speed propeller, variable pitch propeller setup, would actually be a loss of manifold pressure. So manifold pressure, you're thinking about the air that's coming into the engine. They call that the intake manifold. How much air is getting intaked in the intake manifold? How much air is coming into the engine for suck, squeeze, bang, and blow? So remember we said it's that perfect combination, fuel, fire, and air. If I have carburetor ice building up, then that ice is blocking airflow and I could see a loss of manifold pressure. So if I had constant speed propeller, variable pitch propeller, first sign of carburetor ice would be a loss of manifold pressure. If I had a non-fancy engine where there's no constant speed propeller, if I had an engine that was fixed pitch propeller, my first sign of carburetor ice could be a loss of RPM. Regardless, either of those situations could create engine roughness. Okay, so we got a bad deal going on with carburetor ice. Well, how do we solve that? Carburetor heat. So in a carbureted airplane, the pilot would have a new lever to pull called carburetor heat. When you pull carburetor heat, it allows extra hot air to enter the carburetor. This extra hot air comes from a shroud that surrounds the exhaust pipe. So the exhaust pipe gets really hot. They wrap a larger pipe around the smaller hot exhaust pipe, and we now get heated air to enter the carburetor. That heated air could possibly melt the ice. Awesome, we need to melt that ice. So the idea is that hot air cannot hold as much air. Let's try this again. Warmer air, let's try that. Warmer air is less dense. Colder air is more dense. So colder air and warmer air, you're trying to learn about density. Warmer air is less dense. So the same like volume of air, if it's hot, there's actually less air molecules and there's more space between all of those molecules. If I have colder air is more dense, and I have the same volume, but there's more molecules in that fixed given volume of space. So if I introduce extra hot air, which is extra warm air, which is extra less dense, it's less dense air. So carburetor heat means I'm putting warmer air, less dense air into the engine. That less dense air is not going to, it's less dense. So there's less air coming into the carburetor. So the carburetor is having a balance between fuel and air. So if it's the fact that I put less dense air in, then I still have the same old amount of fuel, but the air is less dense. So the big question, the big tricky answer for that one for the written exam is that if I use carburetor heat, it enrichens the mixture. The mixture is richened. The mixture is enrichened by the use of carburetor heat. Why? Because heated air is less dense than cool air. So if you engage carburetor heat, you enrichen the mixture. That's another tricky question on the written exam, ABC style. How would you know if you were burning off the carburetor ice? How would you know if it really was carburetor ice and you're burning it off? That'll be one of the questions on the exam. So you engage carburetor heat. You pull out the carburetor heat knob. You would expect to see a decrease in performance. You would expect your performance to decrease from the engine. The RPMs, the tachometer, the engine would start spinning more slowly on a fixed pitch propeller. So a fixed pitch propeller is now going to see a drop of RPM because we have less dense air entering the engine. If it truly was carburetor heat, if it truly was carburetor ice, this heated air is now causing a decrease of RPM. But as the ice burns off, as the ice melts, the engine gets extra rough because it's ingesting water, but the engine RPMs slowly start increasing because we're melting off the ice. So those are some of the more tricky questions I can think about for, you said the engine operation, chapter 2. You know, I gave you guys 5 or 10 minutes there of about enrichening versus leaning, carburetor ice. Amaya's giving me a thumbs up. So I'm hoping that's helpful. I know that that website exists. It's called Sporty's Study Buddy. And they actually, you can click certain topics. And so it might be worthwhile to as a prep to prepare you, if you think that's your weakness, to do the Sporty Study Buddy and create a session where you only click some of those topics about the engine power plant. And then all of a sudden you might find yourself, you know, studying and seeing the exact FAA test questions that are covering those subject areas. So I got a thumbs up, that's a positive. Was there any other general questions before I pull up ABC test questions that are going to be coming up at you? Okay, so I'm going to click a button. I think you will actually still see my face, but I'm going to click a button that shows me the Blackboard test. All right. So I am looking at the test, and I am going to brief you guys on what some of the test questions might be. You're going to have a question that involves altitudes and direction of flight. So that's a Part 91 regulation. You're supposed to know oddballs fly east. You know, you're supposed to know what altitude to possibly fly at for what direction of flight. So you'll kind of need to know what north, south, east, and west is. Is that based off of true? Is it based off of magnetic? Questions like that. You're going to have some more Part 91 questions. This Part 91 questions are involving minimum safe altitudes. So remember, there's different minimum safe altitudes if you're over congested area, versus a different minimum safe altitude if you're over something other than non-congested area. So let's say over a congested area, something other than congested area, anywhere. So there's also a sparsely populated area. So minimum safe altitudes, Part 91, we need to have an idea of how low can you fly minimum safe altitudes over some of these different scenarios. You need to know which way to turn for standard traffic pattern. You need to know what the typical altitude is for standard traffic pattern, and whether that's AGL or MSL. Okay? You need to know about legal documents, documents that make the airplane legal. A lot of us remember that with like AROW, A-R-O-W. Remember that fancy acronym? Documents that make the airplane legal. Here's an aerodynamics question. It involves ground effect. So there are different types of drag. You'll need to know the different types of drag and what happens when we're inside a ground effect. How high does ground effect go? How does this drag change? What changes about drag when we're in ground effect? How does that affect our performance? Ground effect. You have to know about ground effect. You got a question that's about load factor. Load factor. And, you know, load factor, what is going to affect load factor more? Is it center of gravity location? Is it the speed of the aircraft? You'll need to know about load factor and what can affect load factor. You got another question about drag. This one's about induced drag. And so you need to figure out the difference about angle of attack and induced drag. So like, is it an increase in angle of attack? Is it a decrease in angle of attack? When we change angle of attack, how is that going to affect induced drag? We got another question that involves you looking at a figure. So I guess I should, you know, pause and tell you guys that you will have to use the FAA figures. So when you take the real written exam, when you take our midterm final, you'll have to look up the figures. So there's a link in the test options. When the test instruction comes up, it tells you that you'll need to reference the figures. You can download all those figures off the FAA website. I'll have a link right there for you as well. So if you need to have 2 tabs open, one for the figures. If you're a person that has an actual book that came with the actual figure supplement, then that could be a helpful thing as well, if you can actually physically look at the real figures. If not, you can download a digital copy of these figures. So you'll have a question where you got to look up a figure and study some airspace. And it's going to ask you which of these airports does not allow special VFR. So you need to kind of remember that, you know, special VFR only happens at control towered airports. And then you'll have to read the figure. You just read the figure, and if the airport does not allow special VFR, it literally says NO SVFR right there in the airport data block. Okay. That same figure is going to be used, and you'll have to study a control towered airport, and you'll be looking at the data block on the control towered airport, and you'll have to be able to read that data block to figure out what's the control tower frequency for this airport, which is a different question than what the CTAF might be if the tower was closed. Different question than what the Unicom might be to talk to somebody on the ground. So you have to figure out how to spot the correct frequency out of the data block. You're going to have to know what color is a control towered airport. What color is a non-controlled airport? I think we reviewed some of that earlier today. You'll have some question about the 4 forces of flight, you know, lift, weight, thrust, and drag. And so, you know, what's it called if drag exceeds thrust? What's it called if thrust exceeds drag? What's it called if lift exceeds weight? What's it called if weight exceeds lift? So in some of those cases, you might be climbing. In some of those cases, you might be descending. In some of those cases, you might be accelerating. In another case, you might be decelerating. 4 forces of flight. We got more drag questions. Skin friction drag. Skin friction drag. What kind of drag would that be? What would make it worse? What would make it better? We have some questions about high density altitude versus low density altitude, which is kind of very similar to the conversation we just had about the carburetor, you know, basically more dense air or less dense air, and how would that affect the propeller? How would it affect drag? How would it affect your performance? High density altitude versus low density altitude. So the word high density altitude means thin air, like you're at a high altitude. The word low density altitude means thick air, like you're at a low altitude. We got a question about wind. So the wind's coming from such and such direction, and you got possible runways. How do you know which runway to pick? We actually had this question before. Remember, wherever the wind is coming from, you want to try to land as close as possible headwind. We got a question about humidity. What effect would humidity have on your performance? You know, if it's extra humid outside, is it going to increase your performance? Is it going to decrease your performance? We have a question about VASI system, VASI. So you should have an idea what a VASI is and what it provides you. So like, you know, what did we say? Visual approach slope indicator, you know, is that going to give you like lateral guidance left and right? Is it going to give you vertical guidance up and down? Does it light up the landing area? Light gun signals. We had light gun signals, I think last time for chapter 5. So you're going to have some light gun signals. You must know your light gun signals. Remember signs and markings. So you'll have some signs and marking questions. You need to know, what a double solid double dash means. You need to understand where you might find it. Here's a question that would be from chapter 2, I think, and it's about the instruments. So there's a lot of different colors on an airspeed indicator. So we need to understand what all the different colors on the airspeed indicator are for. If you say the lower limit of the green arc, if we say the upper limit of the white arc, the upper limit of the green arc. So to try to help you in this, I'm explaining to you that when the FAA says the words the lower limit, they are speaking about the lower numbers. So like the lower limit of the green arc would be the smaller, lower speeds. So when you imagine like an airspeed indicator works, it's like a round dial and it's going to spin around in a round circle on an airspeed indicator. So I think some students get confused by when you say the upper limit, when you say the upper limit, the lower limit, they get confused about what upper and lower means. So when they say the word lower limit, they are describing the smaller numbers. When they say upper limit, they are describing the larger, greater numbers. And you'll need to know what the difference between a green arc, white arc, yellow arc mean for the airspeed indicator. We got a diagram. You need to know the difference between chevrons and arrows. So like on an airport diagram, there's some runways that have X's, there's some runways that have chevrons, runways that have arrows. You'll need to know the difference between all the airport markings and what you could use that piece of pavement for versus what you cannot use that piece of pavement for. You got a question with windsocks. So, looking at this windsock, which runway should we use? Should it be left-hand traffic? Should it be right-hand traffic? So we've definitely had that one before on our test and put it on the board and reviewed it together as a class. Airport traffic patterns, studying the windsock and the segmented circle. We got a question about taxi corrections. So if you have a quartering headwind, if you have a quartering tailwind, how are you supposed to position your flight controls? Does the aileron go up? Does the aileron go down? Is the elevator neutral? Is the elevator down? So you got to figure out crosswind corrections. How do we hold the flight controls? We got an airspeed question. So you need to know the differences of the different airspeeds. If you have like a VY, if you have a VX, if you have a VA, what are these different types of airspeeds and what are they going to give us? What does maneuvering speed give us? What does best rate of climb give us? And how is that different than best angle of climb? You need to know the difference between best rate of climb and best angle of climb. You need to know the difference between VX, VY, and be able to explain that. Which one is VX and which one's VY? Definitions. Basically, you have to know your definitions for some of those airspeeds. Here is a CG, center of gravity question. So if my center of gravity is too far forward, what could be issues? If center of gravity is too far aft, what could be the issues? This question says, an airplane said to be inherently stable. And the answer is will require less effort to control. I think all the answer choices are kind of tricky there. So unfortunately, as you study written exams, sometimes you just got to memorize one or choose, figure out which answer the FAA thinks is the best answer. And on this one, they think that an airplane said to be inherently stable will require less effort to control. So basically just telling you the answer to that one. Here is a chapter 2 question. It's about pressure altitude. pressure altitude. So when would we ever use pressure altitude? Like what altitude would we need to use pressure altitude at? When would we change our altimeter and start flying with pressure altitudes? So they're asking you like what altitude, as you climb, what altitude would you make the transition to start using pressure altitude instead of using the local altimeter setting? Yeah, that kind of gives it away, but I think you understand. Here's an airspace question that I covered earlier with you today about restricted area. That, you know, what, can you fly through restricted area? Can you not? Do you need to have prior authorization? Do you not need to have authorization? How does that work? Restricted area. Here's an airspace question, just like we went over today. You'll have to use the figure. You'll open it up and you'll find yourself at a Bravo airspace. I'll go ahead and tell you it's Dallas. You need to, you know, you'll open up the book and you'll be in Dallas airspace, and you'll need to figure out, where does the Bravo floor? Where is the Bravo ceiling? Where is the division line between the Bravo airspace and the underlying airspace? I had a lot of y'all missing this one before. It's talking about an airspace that has a part-time control tower. So let's say you have a Delta airspace part-time control tower. Well, not all control towers stay open 24 hours. A lot of airspaces shut down. A lot of Delta airspaces go to bed at night. So what happens to that airspace? Well, if control tower is closed, then it's no longer a Delta airspace. You need to know that. Because if Delta airspace, I'm supposed to establish dialogue, I'm supposed to establish two-way communication to talk to tower to enter Delta airspace. So if tower goes to bed at night and tower's part-time operation only, is it still Delta airspace? No, it's now going to revert to like an Echo airspace. It's only Delta airspace when the tower is in operation. So I kind of just gave you the answer to that one, but I had a lot of y'all missing that one before. Here's another airspace question. If you're going to operate Echo airspace, what's your cloud clearance visibility requirements? We've covered that one many times today. More airspace questions. It's studying a Charlie airspace. You're looking at the outer shelf area of a Charlie airspace, and it'll actually give you the figures, so you can look it up in the FAA figures, and you'll have to figure out what's the floor, what's the bottom of this Charlie airspace, what's the altitude? Is it AGL? Is it MSL? You have another airspace question about wildlife refuge. Wildlife refuge. So, you know, what does it look like? Well, remember, it's the solid blue with a blue dots. How high are we supposed to fly over those wildlife refuge? You know, is it 1,000 AGL, 2,000 AGL, 3,000 AGL? It might be 2,000. Here's a question about cooling reciprocating aircraft engines. So, you know, you need to know that oil is one of the biggest functions of oil is for cooling. You know, oil is for cleaning and cooling of the engine. It also helps keep our seals lubricated. But, you know, we need good circulation of oil for cooling, definitely, yeah. Here's some question about visual scanning. So you're looking out the window and you're trying to spot other aircraft. How do you determine if there's another aircraft on a collision course with you? And they want to know about the relative motion. Is there relative motion? Is there not relative motion? What would a collision course look like? This one looks like a chapter 2 question. It's talking about the pitot tube and the static port. So if the pitot tube and the static port become clogged, which instruments will be affected? So you need to know, what instruments does the pitot tube connect to? What instruments does the static port connect to? What instruments would be affected if the pitot and static port are clogged? We got a question about torque, you know, like the turning tendency of the airplane, torque. And when is torque going to be the biggest effect for you? Is it going to be at low air speeds, at high air speeds? Is it going to be at high power settings, low power settings? Is it going to be at high angle of attack, low angle of attack? So you need to understand airspeed, power setting, angle of attack, and you need to be able to figure out when is torque going to be the worst for you as a single engine pilot. When is torque going to be the worst for those variables? Here's a question that involves aircraft lighting. So the whole idea is that there are different lights on the aircraft, and you know, like they say that there's a red light on your left wingtip, and then there is a green light on your right wingtip. So if you see a red light in front of you when you're flying at night and it's passing, then that means you're looking at that airplane's left wingtip, so it's actually moving from the right to the left. So I kind of gave you the answer for that one, but you need to know the difference of lights. So the red light is on the left wingtip, the green light's on the right wingtip, and if you see a steady red light and a flashing red light, so they're saying the flashing red light's the beacon, then what's the general direction of that aircraft that you're seeing? Well, you're seeing that airplane's left wingtip, so it's crossing from the right to the left from your perspective. Here's a test question. I think I covered this one the other day. Multicom frequency, M-U-L-T-I-C-O-M, multicom. The standardized multicom frequency is 122.9. So if you get a question about multicom, you should know that multicom is 122.9. I've never really had to use that information as a real pilot. It's kind of a written question that you just have to memorize to get through the written. Here's an airspace question where you look at figures, and you're going to look at a figure, and they're going to be asking you about a controlled airport, like a Delta airport, but they're going to tell you that, hey, the control tower is not in operation. It's past hours, towers went to bed. What frequency would you use for CTAF? So you need to be able to like read the airport data block and figure out which of these frequencies is a CTAF. And why is that different than, say, the Unicom? So remember, a CTAF has a C in a circle. So if you see a C in a circle, that's the CTAF frequency. We got a question about proper phraseology for how to speak on the radio. So say, for example, you had an aircraft that's called November 444 Victor Uniform. So how would you correctly say that on the radio? You would say, you know, 444 Victor Uniform. So you don't want to say, you know, 44-4. So talking about proper phraseology, you know, saying each letter clearly. And I guess this question is more of a history lesson. It's talking about contacting flight service station. And so if you want to contact flight service station, the old school way that this question is telling you is that you call them radio. So like if you wanted to call Terre Haute Flight Service Station, you'd actually say over the, you'd say Terre Haute Radio, this is November 444 Victor Uniform. So the idea is that you are supposed to call flight service station by the name radio. And you're supposed to say all of your digits of your tail number clearly one at a time. Yep. All right. You got some aerodynamic question. Aerodynamic about stall and spin. So, you know, you need to know the definition of a stall. What does it mean to be stalled? What does it mean to spin? Do we have to stall to be able to spin, or can we spin with only one wing stalled, or do both wings have to be stalled? So yes, the airplane needs to be stalled if you want to spin. Yes, both wings are stalled if you're going to spin. What is a spin? It's an uncoordinated stall that results in auto rotation. You need to know why an airplane stalls. You know, we've covered that. The airplane stalls because we exceed the critical angle of attack. Okay, well, does the critical angle of attack change with CG? Does the critical angle of attack change with weight? You need to know some standards. So we got standard values like what is standard temperature? What is standard pressure? What is standard lapse rate? You need to know the standards. Aerodynamics, so we're talking about turning. If you're going to turn an airplane, what force causes an airplane to turn? What force causes an airplane to turn? Here's a question about flaps. What is the purpose of flaps? What is the purpose of flaps? It might allow you to make a steeper approach without excessive airspeed. We got a question about the four forces. So when would the four forces be in equilibrium? When is the four forces in equilibrium? We got a question about wingtip vortices, wake turbulence. So if you're gonna land behind a larger airplane, how do you avoid the wake turbulence? How do you avoid those wingtip vortices? Are you gonna stay above the other aircraft's final approach path? Are you gonna stay below it? Are you gonna stay to its side? Remember, wingtip vortices and wake turbulence sink, so you probably wanna stay above. You have right-of-way question. What kind of aircraft has the right-of-way? What kind of aircraft have the right-of-way? Here's a question about carburetor icing. They want you to know the temperature range of carburetor icing. What is the temperature range of carburetor icing? And they're saying it's 20 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, high humidity. Yeah. Another question about the VASI, VASI, Visual Approach Slope Indicator. And do you need to stay at or above that glide slope? Who is responsible for determining if the aircraft is in a safe condition for flight? Who is responsible for maintaining that the aircraft is in a safe condition for flight? That's you, the PIC. You got a question about transponder. How often does your transponder need to be inspected? You got a question about traffic. So if ATC says you have traffic at your 9 o'clock, where do you look for that traffic? Transponder question. If air traffic control says stop altitude squawk, they tell you to stop altitude squawk. What does that mean? An ELT, emergency locator transmitter question. What frequency does ELT broadcast on? We got a question about chart supplement. A lot of people used to call it AFD, Airport Facilities Directory. Now it's called chart supplement. How often is that updated? How often is the chart supplement updated? You got a question about different types of air traffic controllers. So if you're at a Charlie or Bravo airport, who do you need to contact to get your transponder code, your altitude information, your heading, your departure frequency when you're on the ground? Who do you contact to get that information? I think I gave you a lot of those examples the other day, and I kept talking about Evansville, who you contact in the case of Evansville. You got a question that's speaking about how you're approaching an airport for the purpose of landing. How far away should you make radio calls? You got a question about NOTAMs, notice to airmen's. So you need to have an idea of why they would ever possibly issue a NOTAM. You need to have an idea what Part 91 of the FARs are. FAR, Federal Aviation Regulations. Part 91, you know, what does that stand for? What is Part 91? Is it General Flight Rules and Operating Procedures? You got a question about ACs? AC, Advisory Circulars. So you need to have an idea what AC is and what kind of information would AC provide? Would it be like a regulatory information? Would it be non-regulatory? Looks like we got a picture, airport facilities directory. So this one's kind of tricky. It looks like you're doing some Zulu time. So it's saying that you depart this airport at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Takes you 2 hours to fly to another airport. What time are you going to arrive in Zulu? So you have a lot of questions like that on the real written. And so you just got to remember that, you know, when you studied that airport facilities directory, like we did in class, it tells you like, you know, UTC -5. So that means whatever the Zulu time is, you subtract 5 to get local time. So if this question's asking you that you depart such and such airport at 10 a.m. local, well, then you would add 5 to get to Zulu, which would put you at like what, 15 Zulu? And that's when you depart. And then you got to think, well, how long did it take me to fly to the destination? What time do you arrive? And this question might be asking, what time do you arrive in Zulu? But there are other questions that say, what time do you arrive local? Here's a picture of a airport facilities directory chart supplement. And they're analyzing how would you get a hold of flight service station? So when you study a airport facilities directory chart supplement like we did the other day, you need to have an idea of how would you contact flight service station in that area? What would be the name of that flight service station in that area? Okay. So you got a question here that's actually saying, how would you get flight following? So if you're studying a airport facilities directory chart supplement, how would you figure out which one of these frequencies to contact to request flight following? Remember, if you want flight following, you need to be talking to an air traffic controller that has radar capability. And we talked about how radar capable controllers have an R in a circle surrounding their name and their frequency on the chart supplement. On the chart supplement, the airport facilities directory we studied, when you look at the top right corner, that information that's bold, that's telling you what sectional chart this particular airport's located on. So if you study a particular airport in the airport facilities directory in the chart supplement, if you look at the top right corner of that airport, in bold, it tells you the name of the sectional chart. You got a question that's talking about loss procedures. We covered those just the other day. You need to know your loss procedures. We got another question about, you know, Zulu time. So you start in a certain time zone. You're going to fly for 2 hours and 15 minutes to another time zone. What's your estimated time of arrival? The most tricky thing about those questions is just reading the question. You have to read the question very carefully because each question could give the information in a different way. Some questions tell you you're departing in a local time. Some questions tell you you're departing in a Zulu time. Some questions ask you, what is your time of arrival in Zulu? Some questions ask, what is your time of arrival in local? So just kind of really pay attention to your answer choices, really pay attention to your math, you know, whether you're dealing with local time or Zulu time. You're going to have a figure question where it asks you what's the correct Unicom frequency for this airport? So you have to open up the figure, find the airport, and you have to be able to read the airport data block to figure out which one of these frequencies is Unicom. Because Unicom is who you'd probably use to request fuel. You got a question about ATIS, A-T-I-S, and what kind of information does ATIS broadcast? What kind of information does ATIS tell us? So, you know, it'd probably be like non-control information. You know, it'd probably be in, you know, terminal areas, control tower airports. Here's a question about traffic alerts. So air traffic control might tell you, hey, there's traffic at 11 o'clock. And you're flying a heading of south. Which way do you look for this traffic? So you gotta know your compass, and you gotta imagine, oh, if I'm traveling a certain direction, and then ATC tells me to look a certain area on my clock, what direction am I gonna be looking? I'm almost to the end here. It says, if you're departing a control towered airport, VFR, who should you request radar traffic information from during ground operations? This is a tricky question. So this question is asking that if you want to get radar traffic information during ground operations, which is kind of a confusing question, so I'm just kind of explaining it to you, that they're saying the answer is ground control. So the answer is that they have different choices like clearance delivery, tower, and ground control. They got these different answers for you. And if you want help during ground operations, then you need to request help from ground control. That's the gist of this question. Here's another question. This is the last question. It's talking about transponders. So when is a transponder required? You know, is a transponder required in Delta airspace? Is a transponder required in Echo airspace? Is a transponder required in Gulf airspace? So you need to know when transponder is required. You know, things like Alpha, things like Bravo, things like Charlie. So goodness, I just walked you guys through a lot of airspace questions. I just walked you guys through a lot of questions that are going to be on your midterm test. You know, I'm not flying airplanes today. I don't really have another student until 2 p.m. That's when I have my next student that I have to Zoom conference with. What kind of feedback do you guys have for me? You know, I know that's really difficult to just sit here and have me speak so many questions to you, but I'm hoping that it's helpful in preparation for your test. No feedback.
I actually had a question. I was wanting to know if you could go through like the altimeter errors in chapter 2, where it's you know, low to high, clear the sky, high to low, look out below. Just
Sure.
go through that again, because that's really confusing to me, even after we've gone through the test.
Yeah. Great question. Okay, so the phrase is from low to high, clear the sky. From high to low, look out below. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that it works with temperature or it works with pressure. So you're a pilot, you're flying in the world, and the air mass ahead, you're flying into an air mass where the air is going to be extra thick. You're coming from an air mass where it was really thin air like Florida, and now you're flying into an air mass like Canada, and the air is going to be extra thick. So from high to low, look out below. From low to high, clear the sky. So we are going from an air mass that is low density into an air mass that is high density. So this is low to high, clear the sky. So that means your biggest conflict, your biggest potential to have a midair collision as you fly into Canada from Florida, if you never changed your altimeter setting, then your biggest collision factor is that you might collide with somebody above you. From low to high, clear the sky. So that means that your altimeter is indicating extra low. I think I said that right, because my altimeter indicates that I'm extra low. So if I'm flying at my altimeter indicates extra low. Maybe I said that one wrong. Gosh, it is confusing, I know. From low to high, clear the sky. High to low, look out below, low to high, clear the sky. The altimeter is indicating extra high. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I said it wrong. So the altimeter indicates extra high. So you're flying at this indicated altitude and it's extra high. Gosh, I'm saying it wrong. Let's open a picture. The answer is to open up a picture. So let me just pull up a picture and it'll make way more sense. So I'm gonna hit the button that screen shares. Okay, you guys should be seeing my screen. And let's type in non-standard altimeter. And let's go to images. Okay, so here's the famous pictures that exist. These are like in the Airplane Flying Handbook, Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. It's not as big as I'd like, but I think you guys get the idea. So this is sea level. This is 1,000 foot pressure altitude, pressure level. Here's 2,000 foot pressure level, 3,000 foot pressure level, 4,000 foot pressure level, 5,000 foot pressure level. This thing's in my way. Okay, so if everything was perfect, your altimeter would indicate 5,000 because you're at the 5,000 foot pressure level and you're actually 5,000 feet. You said you were flying from Florida to Canada. So from high to low, look out below. So I'm going from an area of, this picture here is temperature. Let's analyze it in temperature. So high to low, look out below. So as I travel to an area where it's colder, high to low, look out below. Low to high, clear the sky. I'm screwing it up myself. It's tricky. Low to high, clear the sky. So that would be back here. So my example was backwards. That's what's screwing us up. I'm screwing us up with bad examples. It's my fault. And if I'm going from Florida, where it's really, really hot, to Canada, where it's really, really cold, what you're learning is that the pressure levels shrink. With the colder air, the whole atmosphere lives closer to the surface of the earth. The whole atmosphere lives closer to the surface of the earth. So even though if I forgot to change my altimeter setting, I'm closer to the ground than I thought. I remember that. So if it's really, really cold, you are actually closer to the ground than you indicate. So when it's really, really cold, you are closer to the ground than what your altimeter indicates. So that means my altimeter is reading extra high. So the big thing to remember is that if it's really, really cold outside, then that means you are closer to the ground than you think. That means your altimeter is reading extra high. So that's why they say high to low, look out below. If they say high to low, look out below, that means you are extra close to the ground than you think because the whole atmosphere has shrank. So
well, wouldn't that mean you're too low then? Because you said if you're closer to the ground than you think, that means you'd be too low, not too high.
But your altimeter is reading extra high.
Okay.
Like you as the pilot, we're dumb pilots. We just fly whatever the altimeter says. Air traffic control told me to fly 1,000 feet indicated. They told me to fly it. I'm going to fly it 1,000 feet indicated. But if it's extra cold outside, the whole atmosphere has shrank. And so even though I'm flying at the 1,000 foot pressure level, I'm actually closer to the ground than I think. So my altimeter indicates extra high, but I am extra low. I'm still flying the correct altimeter. I'm still flying 1,000 feet like I'm supposed to on my altimeter, but I'm actually extra closer to the ground in the real world because of the errors of the altimeter.
Okay, so that makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense.
It's very, very tricky. I mean, I struggle with it. You struggle with it. There are pilots that struggle with it. I mean, it's very, very tricky. So what I'm going to say just one more time is that when it's extra cold outside, like in the winter, that's when pilots have to be extra careful because they're closer to the ground. So if it's extra cold, then you are closer to the ground than you think. And your altimeter is actually reading extra high. And you think that you're at the correct altitude because you are, but you're actually closer to planet Earth than you think. So from high to low, look out below, because your biggest collision factor is the fact that you might hit something beneath you because you're lower than you think. High to low, look out below, your altimeter is reading extra high. The opposite then would be from low to high, clear the sky. From low to high, clear the sky. So that means if you fly into an area where it's extra hot, low to high, clear the sky, your altimeter is reading extra low. You're flying at what you think is the correct altitude, but you're actually at a higher altitude than you think, clear the sky. Your bigger factor of a collision right now is an airplane above you that has the correct altimeter setting if you don't.
Okay, that to me that makes more sense.
It's very tricky. I'm sorry that I probably said it a few times, incorrectly before we got to it, the correct answer. It's not a simple topic. I don't expect anybody to be experts about it. If it helps to say the phrase over from high to low, look out below, if I'm going into an area of low temperature, it's not easy, I know.
So just so I'm not messing this up, all right. So if we're going from high to low, our altimeter will read higher than what's expected, but you're actually going to be lower.
Yeah, and we're talking about non-standard temperature. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Non-standard temperature.
And then it says in the book, because I'm trying to follow along with the book as well, it also says that applies with pressure. So if you go from just not even temperature, if you go from an area of because if you go from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure without resetting your altimeter, your airplane will be too low.
Yeah, the really thing that's cool is that our altimeter can correct for non-standard pressure. So us as the pilot, all we got to do is put in the local pressure setting and it solves the problem. So it's really not a huge ordeal, for the pilot. You just change the altimeter. But the problem is that your altimeter cannot correct for non-standard temperature. So the bigger problem is when the temperature changes outside because we have no correction for temperature.
Okay.
So
really, as a pilot, what we should be focusing on more is what the temperature is, because like you just said, we can correct for pressure changes from the local weather station, ATIS or calling in or whatever, whichever route you want to choose. But when it comes to temperature, that's more of us paying attention to what's going on outside the airplane with whatever we can use. Because if it's you just talked about, if the temperature changes, then we're going to have to be paying attention to more what's above us or what's going to be below us.
Yeah. And all of the pilots are fighting it, equally in each airplane. And you'll actually notice it like when you do your flight training. So like if you've been flying around in the winter, what 1,000 AGL traffic pattern looks like, it looks like you're closer to the ground. And then when you do that same traffic pattern, 1,000 AGL in the summer, it looks like you're way farther away from the ground. And it's because the whole atmosphere is like a balloon that expands and contracts. Unfortunately, there will be some written exam questions where they talk about how the pilot has the wrong altimeter setting and how it affects. So what you can remember for the altimeter setting is that if you increase the barometer on the altimeter, they call it the Colesman window. When you increase the Colesman window, it increases the indicated altitude. So if I go from 2992 and I start increasing up to 3002 and I start increasing, then the altimeter rises. That's how the altimeter works.
Okay.
And that's backwards from how the real atmosphere works, because the altimeter is trying to correct for the atmosphere.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's as good as we're going to get on an explanation, but I understand it now.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I have logbooks full of hours, and I still get confused. So I mean, it's a tricky thing. You just got to really take your time, think about hot air, cold air. Hot air expands, cold air contracts. I think we've said it all a few times now. So I mean, I'm more than happy to beat a dead horse or continue on. You know, I don't have another student until 2 o'clock, so I'm here to answer any questions that you guys want to go at. I'm not trying to hold anybody up. I feel like I should be like an auctioneer. Like I should be like going once, going twice. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys putting in the time. I'm hoping this is helpful. And basically, we're going to launch the midterm. I'm going to click a few more buttons and make it available, try to accomplish it before Sunday evening. And when we get to see each other again on Monday, we'll be getting to go through it, and looking forward to it all. Thank you so much for putting in the time. If there's no more questions, I hope you guys have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.